forgot to announce that Mr. Taylor has joined us by Zoom today. Do we have Mr. Taylor online? Okay. Can you hear us, Mr. Taylor? Do you know? Okay. All right. Thank you. First item is adoption of the agenda. You see the agenda presented, the emergency.
Yes, I can hear.
Okay. Thank you. The agenda item is to have a COVID update, and that is the purpose of the emergency meeting. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to make a motion on the agenda that if any people have signed up, we give them the option to speak.
That motion's out of order per our policy. Emergency meetings do not have provision for public participation.
Go to policy 2300.
I've got policy 2300.
Okay, and it does say that we can amend the agenda.
That's for a special meeting, not an emergency meeting. So that motion is out of order. What's the pleasure of the board on the agenda?
Move to adopt.
No.
Is there a second?
Second.
So we can't have it one meeting a month, one public participation meeting a month? Or?
There's not a limit. We've met the legal requirement to have one because we've already had an August meeting. But per our policy, it says only business connected with the emergency may be considered at the emergency meeting.
Well, we work for the people of Cleveland County. You called me out of order again, and we don't allow them to speak.
Is there a second to adopt the agenda?
Can we ask the attorney?
I'll defer to the parliamentarian first.
Yeah, absolutely. We can consult the attorney. I mean, I could make an opinion, but you're just going to ask her too. So let's just get straight to it.
Hey.
Hello.
Good afternoon. So per our policy 2300, emergency meeting section 2, an emergency meeting may be called in order to address generally unexpected circumstances that require immediate consideration by the board. The chair or vice chair, if the chair is unable to act, or the superintendent shall call an emergency meeting when it is determined that a meeting is necessary and cannot be delayed until the 48 hours notice is providing for the special meeting, which the chairman referenced. Board members will be notified as far in advance as possible. Each person or organization who has filed a written request or notice of the special meeting will be notified. That has been done by the superintendent's office. So our policy is actually silent on the public participation as it relates to emergency meetings. However, we do have a per month requirement for public participation, which has been satisfied from our last August meeting. So we have met our quota for public participation for the month.
Okay, but if somebody wanted to second, can we amend the agenda? And can we amend the agenda and then call for a vote?
So our policy is silent on that issue.
Well, would a motion to suspend the rules be in order? Would a motion to suspend the rules be in order?
That would be appropriate. We would need a two-thirds vote for that to prevail under Robert.
Is it not half if done at the time?
If you're going outside of the norm under Robert's Rules of Order, you go to a two-thirds vote for that to suspend the rules, but that is an option.
Okay, well, can I make a motion to suspend the rules in this case?
Yes. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Motion by Ms. Green, second by Mr. Blanton. Those and again, this will need 2/3 to pass. Those in favor of the motion to suspend the rules, if you'd raise your hand. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. Mr. Taylor?
I lost connection. What was suspended rules?
The motion is to suspend the rules to allow public participation.
Oh, I'm in favor of that.
Okay, so that's 5. So that's 5-4. So that motion fails. It did not receive a majority vote.
Two-thirds.
Yes.
All right,
It
raise,
did not receive two-thirds, though.
raise your hand again if you're in favor of suspending the rules. 1, 2, 3, 4, and Mr. Taylor makes 5. So it does not receive the 2 required to suspend the rules. So is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I've already made a motion to.
Mr. Humphries made the motion. Is there a second?
I've got one more question that I had difficulty hearing this scene. So, does it say in our policy that we are to be silent and to silent our audience from doing any participation? Is that what you said?
No.
I missed that part where it says that specifically we are not to allow anyone to speak in emergency.
That's right. I said our policy is silent on that issue. It doesn't speak to that issue directly.
So it doesn't even speak to that at all?
That's
about
correct.
Participation, is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Well, in the follow-on to that policy where it discusses special meetings, it goes in and indicates that, the special meeting's supposed to be for the item called, but by a majority vote of the board, you can add to the agenda. The emergency meeting does not include that language, and that's why I made the ruling I did, that for whatever reason, when that policy was written, that was left out.
Well, I thought it was a simple majority if made at the time of the adoption of the agenda. If made after that, it's a 2/3 vote. Is that not correct?
For the adoption of the agenda, that's correct. If we are essentially like taking away a right or changing a rule, that's when we need the 2/3 majority under Robert's Rules of Order. Like if someone called for question and not everyone had a chance to discuss, you'd need the 2/3 majority. So I parallel this scenario kind of in a similar
As you say, the policy is silent as far as adding items to the emergency meeting agenda.
That's right.
We have a motion and a second.
Yeah, there is a motion and a second on the floor to adopt the agenda.
At this time, it'd be appropriate
I'll call it,
to
please.
call the
Is it appropriate to amend the motion?
So once a motion is on the table, it's got a second, you can, during the discussion, put in an amendment.
I make a motion that we amend the agenda and add the motion to add public participation.
Or you would just be amending the original motion to approve
I make that motion that we amend the original motion.
So you'd be amending the original motion to approve the agenda, the
By
amendment
adding
being
public
by adding
participation.
public participation. That's right. So if
Okay.
that would now need a second.
I'll second that.
So you consider that in order for the policy?
Just from parliamentary procedure.
Okay. All right, have a motion and a second to amend the agenda to add public participation. Any further questions or discussion? Yeah.
We work for the people of Cleveland County.
Any
That's
other-
who we work for, and that's who we should be allowing to speak, and we get their side of the story too, whether they're for or against, period.
Any further questions or discussion?
I'd just like to make a comment. I agree with Mr. Blanton that we do work for the people. However, we have set a precedent in the past with these types of meetings that we didn't allow public participation. I think that a lady actually emailed wanting to speak, and we told them that in the past we haven't allowed that. And so she's probably not showed up. So I think the precedent is, everybody says, we've received emails, but they want to speak. Well, I've heard you loud and clear through the emails. I mean, I've heard everything. I'm not for not letting people speak. The precedent that we set in the past is the reason I'm not voting for that.
Any other questions or comments on the amendment?
Can we find out how many people we have signed up at this point? Nobody signed up yet.
Well, there was
But have signed a few.
15, okay? That would be 45 minutes worth. So, any,
Well, just point of discussion. The other people that maybe wanted to say something didn't know to sign up. So, I mean, if we're going down that road, we got to go down it fairly.
if, hang on a minute, if the amendment passes, then we will have the,
Leah's got something.
well, hang on. If the amendment passes, then we'll have to take a vote on the agenda as amended, so there'll be 2 votes. If that happens, we can take a 5-minute recess to allow anyone else to sign up. And then depending on what that number is, we can decide if we need to adjust the time or not.
I think we'll have to vote on the amendment first.
We will.
And dispense of that, then
Yeah,
vote on.
we've got to do the amendment first.
amended agenda.
Exactly.
So it's 2 separate things, but
Yes.
Well, and I was just going to add, traditionally speaking, and the reason why I was encouraging the 2/3 vote is because as a tradition at emergency meetings, public comment has not been included. So just point of reference for the board.
But
That
I'm
was the
assuming,
point I was trying to make.
but for the amendment, we're saying a simple majority. Or are we saying 2/3?
It's a simple majority.
I would say so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'd also like to say, we're in different times now. This is COVID times, so, there's a lot of rules that are changing to, this is not a typical emergency meeting that we have ever done in the past. So these are different times, and we're making a huge decision for our staff, teachers, our students in the community. And if we don't listen to them now, we can listen to them later, but we don't have an opportunity to have a vote at that time. So I recommend that we pass both of these motions.
And I guess the only restriction would be per our policy, it would have to be limited to the matter at hand for today's emergency purpose. So.
Further discussion on the amendment? Those in favor of the amendment to the participants, if you'd raise your hand. Mr. Taylor?
I agree.
Okay. Those opposed? So the amendment carries 5-4. All right, now we already have a motion on the, no, we'll need a separate motion. Yep.
No, we've
Goes
already
back to
got-
the original.
it
Goes back to the original, excuse me. All right, now we need to vote on the agenda as amended. So that would include public participation, and we will put that, we'll call that 2.02, which would be the next item. Any further discussion? Those in favor of the agenda as amended, if you'd raise your hand. Mr. Taylor? Mr. Taylor, can you hear me?
Yes, I vote for the agenda.
Okay. Those opposed? And that motion carries 5-4. All right. We'll call for a 5-minute recess. If any others need to sign up, the list is over here next to Ms. Bridges, and we'll reconvene at 12:19. call our meeting back to order. And just as a reminder, before we get started with public participation, there are 17 signed up. Be just short of an hour. Without just reading the policy to you, please we understand there's very passionate views on both sides of this issue. Please be respectful of one another. While someone's speaking, you may hate every word they say, but they've got a right to say it. They may hate everything you say when you get up, so please be respectful both ways. We do have a 3-minute time limit. You'll be able to see that on the screen. In the past, I've tried to be somewhat lenient with that. If I felt like you were getting close, I maybe gave you a few more seconds, but I'll have to hold you tight to the 3 minutes today. So it'll turn red when you get close. Just please stop then so we don't have any issues with that. And while folks are speaking, if you could keep the comments and whispering and cheers and clapping down, that will be helpful. This auditorium, the sound does carry. I want to be able to listen to what each person has to say, and if there's whispering and things going on, that is distractive. At least it is to me. So I do want to be able to hear what everyone has to say. So I think that's fair enough. We're Cleveland County folks. Let's act like it and treat each other good. First speaker is
Thank you. I'd also like to inform the board that when I first saw the notice of this emergency meeting, I just wondered what was the emergency. And now I know the emergency was a way to try to keep the public from being able to speak. And I think you guys proved that. And I'm glad this is a victory for the people, that they were able to speak. Now, hopefully we'll have a lot more victories. My feeling on this COVID-19, Delta variant, whatever, I've got a mask on, I'm taking it off. I wore it today just because I didn't know what was going to happen, how many people was going to be here or whatever. I'm glad that we had a good turnout. But my experience, work experience has been, I've been around a lot of construction sites. We have mandates to wear hard hats. We have mandates to wear safety glasses. We have mandates to wear hearing protection. We have mandates to wear steel-toed or hard-toed shoes. We've got mandates to wear shoes and clothes. We have mandates all the time. And all of them, the hard hat, the safety glasses, all of that makes sense. I've never had anything hit me on the head that would have injured me or stumped my toe or anything, anything approach my eyes, but it was there in case I needed it. I've seen things that were suspended overhead that if it would have fell on you, a hard hat wouldn't have made any difference. You would have been squished. So you just have to take precautions. Like if you've got a heavy load suspended, you don't walk under it. Just simple, common sense stuff. And I think that's what people want you folks to decide to do, is do common sense stuff about the masks or whatever your meeting's for. We don't even know what your meeting's going to be about. We're just anticipating that it's about masks. And I think it probably is. I don't know. We'll find out in a little bit. But my feeling on the mask is just like I said about hard hats and safety glasses. I never questioned that. I just put them on and wore them. And I think kids in school, if y'all decide to mandate masks, within a short period of time, they'll get used to it. I don't like masks. I didn't like hard hats. I didn't like the safety-toed shoes. I didn't like the safety glasses. I didn't like the hearing protection. But I wore it. It was important. You notice I sat up front and I cut mirrors occasionally. I've had hearing losses over the years because sometimes I didn't use my protection like I should have.
Mr. Williams, that's your 3 minutes.
My time's up? Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trina Angel.
Thank you for your time and letting us all speak as parents. I'm the parent of 3 daughters. They are all products of the Cleveland County school system. My oldest daughter just graduated with a doctorate degree in educational leadership. I really have been a supporter of Cleveland County schools. I'm not going to take 3 minutes. It's very simple what I'd like to say. On one of my daughter's high school, I think it was her high school walls, was the old African proverb, it takes a whole village to raise a child. I disagree with that when the village tries to come in and override the parents' decision and what they think is right for their children. If we would just simply leave the policy optional, parents who want their children to wear a mask, fine. Parents who don't, that's their decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Lenny Wright.
Thank you, Chairman and Board. I'll try not to use 3 minutes if I can, but anyway, a minute ago we stood up and the last sentence we said as we saluted the flag was liberty and justice for all. I was in the Air Force and I fought for that like a lot of my family, maybe some of you guys and some of our audience members. I feel like that we're to a point where our nation and even in here in Cleveland County in this room, we're divided 50-50, pretty close. I have 3 children also. My son just graduated UNC Charlotte with a 4.0. He starts his master's this week. He interned with the U.S. Marshals at the federal courthouse last year and caught COVID. He survived. He was sick a few days. I have a daughter who started her sophomore year at Carolina today. She's a cheerleader at UNC in Chapel Hill. She's caught COVID twice. She's fine. I have a 12-year-old who is a rising 7th grader. She had cheer camp a few weeks ago, about 4 weeks ago, 18 girls. She's one of 18. On Thursday, I picked her up. She said, Dad, I've been coughing today. I said, are you okay? You feel bad? You have a fever? No. She said, but when I ran some laps, I just felt tired. I said, well, we need to go get you checked out. So I brought her to the urgent care across from Chick-fil-A here in Shelby. She's 12 years old. They did a test, immediately come back positive for COVID. I had the same kind of little cough. They tested me negative. On Monday, I tested again. I was still negative. Out of the 18 cheerleaders, they were there 9 to 5, Monday through Thursday, because it was they were all quarantined after Thursday when my daughter tested positive. From 9 to 5, Monday through Thursday, they practiced. No mask, cheerleaders, guys. They were stunting, cheering in each other's face, tumbling, eating lunch together. You know how many of them tested positive after my daughter? 0. None. 0. So is the virus real? Yeah, my family's had it. I believe it's real, but I believe we live in America. I believe that a lot of men and women fought for rights. As a parent, I don't want my rights trampled on. If somebody wants their kid to wear a mask, let them wear it. If they want to get vaccines, let them wear it. I just present this to you and everyone else. What if this was flipped? What if your amendment today was, if you've had the vaccine or you're going to wear a mask, you can't come to school? How would you feel? People, listen, we're divided. It is what it is. I pray for everyone. I am a Christian man, but I feel like that as a parent, I have my rights whether my kid wears a mask or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Nanette Leonhardt.
Hey, Board, I recognize all of you, and I know that your job is so difficult. I got to hear Dot Cherry, who is Vice Chairman of the Gaston County Schools last night, and you know what she said? It just made so much sense. We have parents of 1 child, 10 kids. She said, I'm a parent of 32,000. She has to make a decision for 32,000 kids in the school. In all of her schools over there in Gaston County. It's difficult. It's very difficult, your jobs. But remember who you work for. Look out here. Remember who you work for. Listen to us. We beg you, listen to us. Thank you so much for this public participation. You do need to hear from us, and I'd like to see that amendment taken care of, you know, whatever you guys called it, in Robert's Rules of Order, where the emergency meeting can have public participation. I've got a 14-year-old granddaughter. She was fine, but this mask thing that happened last year, I picked her up due to the storm yesterday, and she's talking about committing suicide. Her personality has changed. This is awful to have a mask on her. Make it optional. I mean, you know, make it optional. I understand this is difficult, but it's difficult for me to talk to my granddaughter with this mask over her face. She's broken out on her face due to the mask mandate. And so I just like to see it optional, if at all possible, you know. Don't take our, you know, I've got three things: Jesus, truth, and freedom. I'll fight for all three of them. You guys know that. I mean, you will. You'll fight for it. And that's all I've got to say. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Next is Dr. Katie Borders.
Thank you all for calling this meeting today. I hope you all received my letter yesterday from 90, that's 90 local medical professionals across all specialties, across all stages of their career, and across political parties, who all recommended that we require masking in school. What I don't think my letter did convey is our emotion, the frustration that we are dealing with, you know, over a year and a half into this pandemic. We were trained to diagnose, treat, and prevent disease. And you and your families and everyone in here and out in Cleveland County have trusted us to do that. You trust us to take care of yourself, your wife, your daughter, your granddaughter when she's pregnant and having a baby. You trust us to treat your child when he or she has appendicitis. You trust us to look after your brother when he breaks his arm. You trust us to look after one of you when you think you're having a heart attack. And you trust us to take care of you after a car accident that you didn't even intend to have. We are the experts at diagnosing, treating, and preventing disease. We are not experts at law enforcement, building highways, or even teaching. And so when we need to do one of those things, we seek out the experts and their opinions. So please listen to the experts, like your colleagues in Lincoln County, Gaston County, Mecklenburg County, Cabarrus County, Pinnacle Classical Academy, and Thomas Jefferson Classical Academy, and make masks universal. Thank you.
Thank you. Ronnie Grigg.
There's only one thing I really want to say is that, you know, you guys made the decision a few months back. You need to stick with the decision. Have the backbone, follow through with what you put out there. You're never going to please all these people out here. As you can see, we're divided. Turn around and look out here. You're going to see half of us with and half of us without. Don't put our kids in a situation where they have to go to class and wear those masks every day, and the teachers have to be mask police. Stick with your decision you made a few months ago. I think that's what you need to do. And like everybody else has said, remember, you do work for us. We don't work for y'all. Y'all work for us.
Thank you. Spencer Borders.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity to speak. My name's Spencer Borders. I'm a business owner. I'm a parent of 2 students in the Cleveland County school system, and I'm a product of the Cleveland County school system, and I'm in favor of the mask mandate. I just want to talk, facts about the quarantine policy that happens once, a child gets diagnosed with COVID or a teacher in the classroom. You got, roughly 25 kids in a 30 by 30 room. It's impossible that they're not going to have close contact. So 2 scenarios in the classroom. Mask, without the mask mandate, 1 kid or 1 teacher gets COVID. Education for that classroom is interrupted. The whole class has to go home. That's going to happen if you don't mandate masks. It's all about the mandate. It changes the quarantine policy. With the mandate, 1 kid or 1 teacher gets COVID in that classroom, that 1 kid or that 1 teacher goes home with COVID, and education can continue. We want to keep our kids in the class. It seems like a no-brainer to me. This is not a political issue. This is just a common sense issue. I sell commercial real estate, and I'm not a teacher. So when quarantine happens and my kids have to come home, I have to be the teacher because my wife's working and I have a flexible schedule. I don't know how to teach them biology and trigonometry. I am good at teaching them how to be good citizens, how to be considerate of others. So my kids deserve better teaching than me trying to teach them something that I don't know about. Please do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Lori McKee.
So I'll keep this short and sweet because I had no idea that I was even going to talk until I was on the way over here. I just left the hospital, and right now there are 60 positive COVID cases in our hospital. There are 120 on the vent in our atrium system right now with COVID, including 16 kids who are hospitalized, and that includes 2 kids who are on the vent. I also just got back a couple of weeks ago from chaperoning our youth down to Caswell, and 12 people came back positive with COVID from that trip. It is very, very, very transmissible, this Delta variant. So I actually like a couple of the clique of you 5, but you all won't have my vote unless y'all stop voting straight party lines. Y'all need to stop caving to peer pressure and think independently on this issue and every other issue like Greg Taylor has, and do what's right for the kids and not your party or your egos. A change of your decision will actually garner you more respect in the public instead of you sticking to your guns or having a backbone. Do what is right for our kids and our community.
Ms. Hooper, I ask for everyone to be respectful while others are speaking. Rick Steves, did I get that right? Rick Steves.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I can look around this room to almost everyone that's here and say, you have probably been vaccinated. That's why most of you are still here. If it was smallpox, many of you would already be dead. I've worked my entire life to prevent diseases in kids. And this disease, apparently, is one of the worst we've ever faced. It respects no party, no person, no state. Even some states where the governors have had 3 shots of the vaccine and not worn a mask. Have you had 3 shots of the vaccine yet? Some of you will be getting that soon, I hope. You need the protection. Delta is something that we have never dealt with before. When we started with COVID, it was bad, but it's not near as bad as Delta. The only way that we have to stop the spread of this disease at this point is masks. Why? Because people haven't gotten vaccinated. Every one of you is a danger to someone around you if you are not wearing your mask. Even those who've had the vaccine are now having COVID with the variant. Most people hospitalized, it's with Delta now. I think we're close to the margin on the vaccine that we're using. And every time we let this disease go on another day and unchecked, we run the risk of a second Delta. We don't want a second Delta. We really can't stand a second Delta. We don't want to be masked. But we don't want to lose our kids. Our kids are very important to us. That is who we owe this to, the kids. The ones that can't get vaccine, the ones that have older brothers and sisters who may well have COVID vaccine and may well have the variant. Please consider protecting your neighbors and protect yourself, and especially protect your kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Russ Bradley.
Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing us to speak and to address y'all this afternoon. You know, today's propaganda is if we all wear masks and get vaccinated, COVID-19 is going to go away. That's simply not true. It's not going away. It's here to stay. Studies have shown that. Most of you probably already have your minds up how you're going to vote today, but if the mask were really important to you, you would be wearing your mask right now because you're not 6 feet apart. You're only, 3 feet apart. There was a study that came out yesterday from ABC7's Bay Area COVID-19 tracker in California. It said coronavirus hospitalizations have matched the 2020 summer high in California Bay Area, despite the area reimposing mask mandates even among the vaccinated individuals. In a report that came out in 2020, of October 14, 2020, 71% of the patients contracted the virus despite having said they always wore the mask. University of South Carolina, a study that came out on July 16th, talking about the psychological effects on children. It said the benefits of masks is preventing serious illness or death from COVID-19 among children is infinitesimally small. COVID-19 is less of a threat to children than accidents or the common flu. They went on to say the long-term harm to kids from masking is potentially enormous. Masking is a psychological stressor for children and disrupts their learning. We're going to mandate masks for children, but yet at lunchtime they eat in their classroom at their desk. A lot of schools do. They take their mask off for the 30 minutes. That goes beyond the 15-minute guidelines that you're supposed to be within each other with or without a mask. It's all about perception. It's going to make us look good that we do something because in all reality, studies have shown that it's the masks are not effective. We're doing something to look good. What about the contact sports? Somebody's already alluded to that. No mask. Okay? State of South Carolina, optional mask. And I want to say that if wearing masks, if that's y'all's decision today, that if wearing masks is demanded or mandatory in the Cleveland County schools, that they be the N95 mask, not the paper mask, not the fabric, the cloth, whatever people want to wear, but they be the N95 that has been proven to be effective, and that the schools board provide masks for every student and teacher every day
Mr. Bradley,
for those masks.
your 3 minutes. Thank you. Lee Wagman.
Hey, you guys, this was definitely not the plan for today, and despite what people think, this is way out of my comfort zone, but I have a kid in the Cleveland County school system, and one thing I want to say first is that we are all here because we all have the same common denominator. We're here because we love our kids and we love our families, and we're trying to do what's best for them. And I have friends in this audience who believe in masks, and I love them like they're my family. I personally can tell you from experience of having a kindergartner what that was like for me this last school year. Having your kid not get to see the teacher's face, not getting to walk your child into his classroom on his first day of school, when he's terrified, it's a new environment. The warmness you see when you look at someone, I can see you guys right now. I'm a happy person, even despite all odds. And I love to see your eyes and your face. I can see when you're uncomfortable. Kids need to see that. And when my kindergartner came home every single day, his face mask is cloth. I could wring out the water in it. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty sure inhaling water droplets all day long as a kindergartner is not safe. It's not healthy. I can also tell you, as picking up my child from the school, West School is where he goes, and I'm sitting in the carpool line, and I get there early. I like to be at the front, and these kids are outside in 100-degree weather, socially distanced outside, and they're wearing face masks. They can't breathe. I want you to go outside as an adult. The first thing you do when we leave these meetings is we take our face mask off because we can't breathe. And I agree with the gentleman, because the N95 mask, teachers need it. They're teaching our kids. These cloth masks, if I can smell your breath or your perfume, they're not preventing me from catching COVID. I had COVID. I even wiped down my groceries from DoorDash. I was that person. Wore gloves, did not keep me from getting COVID. What I will say is your children are outside playing with their neighbors. They're playing with kids whose parents believe in masks, but they're going to their house unmasked. They're in community sports unmasked, and they're playing together without a mask on. Going to school for 8 hours wearing a mask really doesn't matter if they're coming home from school and they're playing without a mask. I respect your decision either way, because I know we're all here just to do what's best for our kids. And this is a hard decision for you guys, and I just wanted to say that I believe it's a parent's choice to do what's best for your kid. And I know you guys have a hard decision to make, and I thank you for your time. And the people here, I love you all no matter what belief you have. We're all here for the same reason, and that's because we love our kids and we want what's best for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Dusty Horde.
How y'all doing? I became a type 2 diabetic after my third deployment overseas. So this would be real deadly to me. I haven't wore a mask. Let me correct myself. I've wore a mask a total of probably 30 minutes during this whole pandemic. I don't wear a mask when I go to Walmart, don't Lowe's, anything. Maybe my kid's doctor's office, but here lately I haven't been getting hollered at for it. I can care less. But my dad, last December, got COVID because he was wearing a mask, and the guy that had it had a mask on. He brought it back home, and we got it from him. If I wouldn't have had to get checked, I wouldn't known I had COVID. I mean, it hits everybody different, but I got 3 kids in school. One's a senior, one's a freshman, one's going to pre-K. And my whole household got it, except for my 4-year-old. Even if you do masks, I don't think elementary should have to wear masks. Even the teacher does, maybe, but appreciate it.
Thank you. Aaron Sellers.
How's it going today? You wanted to talk about the mask today, and so do I. I did my research too on the FDA website. It plainly states that N95 respirators are not designed for children or people with facial hair because they cannot properly fit a child's face. The elementary school, you can read it if you want, it's on the FDA website. Also, the other mask, The surgical mask, those are just effective enough for blocking splashes and large particle droplets. Face mask is by design is to your personal protective equipment, not those of others. It has never been that design until 2020 when somebody came out and said it's supposed to protect someone else. It is your personal protective equipment. Any of those surgeons, they wear that stuff in case something splashes up on their face. It's not going to stop small particles from coming into your, and if you have a mask on, when you breathe out, all those particles still come out. Last year, when it was a governor mandated mask, kids and staff and faculty all still got COVID, but everybody had masks on in the school. So it apparently is not doing any different. Whether you wear a mask or not, it's your own choice. But it is the choice of the person to have that and the choice of the parent. And if y'all go out to the game Friday night, I'm sure 95% of those will be out there at that football game without a mask on. They're going to be everywhere else in out the county. Did any of y'all go to any of the orientations and see how many of the actual parents and students that were not wearing masks? Did any of y'all go? Y'all are supposed to be representatives for us. Did any one of y'all go to any orientation? There's an orientation right now happening. I'm sure 95% of them are not wearing masks. You might have a few people come up here from the other side, but I'm pretty sure we're all the same, because you can go throughout this entire county and see 95% of people with no mask on. You can also see, last week, when half of the staff of Atrium were having a march and a rally because they refused to get the vaccine. That's nurses, right? That was in Cleveland County. They're going to fire them if they don't get it. They're trying to mandate that. Everybody is fighting for freedom right now. And we elected y'all strictly for a public education and representative of the parents and the students. That's what y'all's job is. It's not your job to teach us or mandate something for our kids' health. That is our responsibility. And if we want to visit with
Mr. Sellers, I'm sorry.
All right, I'm done.
Thank you. I'm having a hard time with the last name. It's Donald Rye. Looks like W-R-Y. Okay.
First thing I want to say, tell you all, I appreciate very much that you gave us this opportunity to speak. I am COVID recovered, as is my whole family. And I've come today to share some information with you. Last year, our kids wore those masks all year long. My wife and I heard that they could gather bacteria. So we got some Petri dishes, and last day of school last year, we dipped them in the Petri dishes. We got results, a lot of them. Every time you exhale, you do release vapor from your body, and you release it roughly 98.6 degrees. Each time you exhale again, you renew the temperature. So anything that is floating around in the air is going to cling to that. It's going to grow. If you don't have COVID and you go by someone who does have COVID, COVID is going to cling to the outside of that mask. At the end of the day, when you take it off and you think it's all over, you touch the outside of the mask. All last year, we had our kids wearing these cloth Petri dishes on their faces in the name of preventing the spread of disease. And what it's actually done is they've carried it all home. Cloth masks are not the answer. That's one thing I wanted to share with you. You're actually putting your people at home at risk by demanding this to be worn. And I'd like to close in reminding you of the words of Dr. Anthony Fauci when this whole thing first started. He was opposed to masks because people would be touching the outside of them and not washing their hands. At that time, he insisted everybody must wash their hands because the common cold is spread more by handling and touching than by airborne transmission. Also, the COVID, like the common cold, is a coronavirus. We can't have a vaccine for a common cold, but somehow we have one for a coronavirus called COVID. And that's really all I wanted to say, other than wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your COVID-covered hands. Thank you.
Thank you. Samuel White.
Hi, how are y'all doing? My name is Samuel White. I have a son who goes to Beth Ware Elementary School. He is 9, very sweet kid, but he's also a very quiet child. He had to go through speech classes when he was in kindergarten and first grade and into second to help him with his speech. What was very important in that was to see his teacher's mouth, to see her move her mouth and enunciate her words so he could learn. Now, he can speak really well, but I'm sure there's plenty of kids out there that are going to speech classes and who are still struggling with it because of the mask. They can't read what the teacher says. Just wanted to read a part of an article here. This is from the Wall Street Journal. It's an op-ed. It's from Dr. McAree, who is professor at Johns Hopkins University, and Dr. Cody Meisner, who is an infectious disease doctor. They write, authorities in many places took the cue to impose mandates in schools and elsewhere on a theory that masks can't do any harm. That isn't true. Some children are fine wearing masks, but others struggle. Those who have myopia can have difficulty seeing because the mask fog their glasses. My child also has that, so he has trouble seeing. Masks can cause severe acne and other skin problems. The discomfort of masks distracts some children from learning. By increasing airway resistance during exhalation, masks can lead to increased levels of carbon dioxide in the blood. And masks can be vectors for pathogens if they become moist or are used for too long, like the lady had mentioned. In March, Ireland's Department of Health announced that it won't require masks in schools because they may exacerbate anxiety or breathing difficulties for some students. Some children compensate for such difficulties by breathing through their mouths. Chronic and prolonged mouth breathing can alter facial development. It is well documented that children who mouth breathe because adenoids block their nasal airways can develop a mouth deformity and elongated face. The possible psychological harm of widespread masking is an even greater worry. Facial expressions are integral to human connection, particularly for young children who are learning how to signal fear, confusion, and happiness. Covering a child's face mutes these nonverbal forms of communication and can result in robotic and emotionless interactions, anxiety, and depression. Seeing people speak is a building block of phonetic development. It is easily important for children with disabilities such as hearing impairment. Now, what bothers me is to hear medical professionals come up here and fail to do a little bit of research. 5-minute Google search, I was able to do that. What ticks me off is to hear people who just regurgitate whatever crap the CDC puts out, but fail to even look at their own data because their own data even proves that they're wrong. So I'm just begging you to please do the right thing and make it optional for kids.
That's your 3 minutes. Thank you. Ms. Hord, Caroline Hord.
Thanks for letting us speak. I just want to say a couple of things. I also do 5-minute Google searches because that's my quick go-to, but I really like to trust the people who have years of experience working in medical fields, and those are the people that I want to get my information from. I am a woman of faith. I am a Christian woman. I am an ordained minister, but I have also heard people say, faith over fear, faith over fear. We got to have faith. We can't have fear. Well, God gave us brains and common sense to use. And so I have all the faith in the world. And yes, I'm scared of a virus. I'm scared that I may be the one to give it to you. I'm scared. I'm afraid that my child might give it to the child that's sitting beside of him. And his dad may be suffering from leukemia and have to go home, and then it's transmitted. like somebody said, we can teach our children things. I'm not good at algebra. I need the teachers to do that. I want to keep my child in school. My child has been wearing a mask every day. If he goes anywhere, he wears his mask. There for a while, when we were talking about not wearing masks at church, he was the only one still wearing a mask. He wants to go to school. He did a musical wearing a mask. He played Jesus in Godspell and wore a mask. And if Jesus can wear a mask, I think all of us can wear a mask.
Okay. Come on, folks.
But anyway, so let's think about not only ourselves, but let's think about the other folks. Yes, no one wants to wear a mask. They're uncomfortable. My breath, I can smell it in a mask. I don't want to smell it, but you do what you have to do. When you do for others, you've done it for when you've done it for the least of these, you've done it for Jesus. And so the least of these right now are our children, and we have to protect our children and our teachers. And I'm asking you all, please, to do the right thing. We have not had a child die in Cleveland County yet. We want to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Nikki Melton.
How y'all doing today? My daughter has neurofibromatosis. She was taking chemo when she got the coronavirus that got spread from me working at BPG, where you have to wear a mask. And she survived. She was totally fine. All she had was a cough, a sore throat, give her Tylenol. Nothing come of it. Her immune system was weak because she was taking COVID. Did it hurt her in any way? It didn't. She went to Charlotte every day like she's supposed to, get her chemo. Now she's on a different medicine. It's called Mechanist. And she's starting kindergarten. She don't want to wear a mask. She refuses to wear a mask. When she goes over yonder to Charlotte, she refuses to wear a mask because it's a big old tumor that comes out her neck, up under her ear, down her lungs, and sits there. Nothing anybody can do about it. We've tried since she was 2 years old. And she ain't going to wear a mask when she goes to school. And she's already had the coronavirus. So it ain't hurt her with her taking chemo. So what's a mask going to do whenever she goes to school? Well, she ain't going to be comfortable wearing it. She ain't going to be comfortable when she's trying to learn her ABCs, trying to learn all her shapes, trying to learn all this stuff, fighting with the teacher to keep the mask on, to take it off. So it's not good for no kindergartner. But my 13-year-old and my 15-year-old that's in the high school, I can see them wearing masks. But the elementary school and the little kids, I don't see them wearing masks at all. For her to survive coronavirus with her taking chemotherapy, I believe that most anybody can. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's all our speakers. So we have COVID update. Dr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I do want to say from Cleveland County School staff, we appreciate the hard work and diligence from each of our board members, the compassion that you have for our staff and our students, continuing to look into what's best interest of our community. I just appreciate all the time, energy, and effort that all of you have spent in doing the work, reading emails, and the time invested in really not only just what you're doing here with COVID and the concerns that have been presented, but what you do every day in promoting and the cultivating excellence that we push for in our community. I did, just real briefly, it won't be long, I've provided an update for you of the number of positive cases that have been reported during student days. And these are reported cases that during the student days, you see that data there. Obviously, we have only 2 schools in session right now, Graham Elementary and Cleveland Early College High School. The second sheet is a list of the positive with close contacts. When you look, you see 11 rows there 9 of which are highlighted yellow. The 2 rows at the top are white. Those were reports that we got before school started. So there are 9 yellow rows. That coordinates with the 9 total of student cases that we've had. You can see there in the column to the far right the number of close contacts for each one of those situations. Mr. Chairman, be glad to try to answer any questions related to this data.
Okay, any questions? Mr. Blank?
Yes. How many do you have any data on exactly how many children that got the COVID through our school system, or was it brought in? Do you have any numbers on that?
Not with this current data, Mr. Blanton. When we looked at our data from last year and we tracked all that data last year, we had very low transmission during the school day last year.
From our school system. In other words, you're saying that it came in from the outside into the school, not from the school to the outside. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, I think the reports that we have, the information we have very low reports and documented case of in-school transmission. And that was from the data that we collected really throughout the last year and accelerated last spring.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Glover?
Will you help him remind us, because it seems like it's changed in the past. Can you tell us, and so everybody is up to date on close contact, the difference between wearing a mask and not wearing a mask for close contact in the quarantine time and the instructional hours these students would lose?
The close contact is defined by someone who is within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes cumulatively over a 24-hour period of time. So whether that's 15 minutes all at one time or 3 sessions of 5 minutes, 15 minutes within 6 feet cumulatively over a 24-hour period of time. So from that's a close contact. And when our partners in the health department and our school nurses and school health technicians, when they work through contact tracing, if you have 2 students that a student that is COVID positive and a close contact and they're both wearing a mask, then that student who is just a close contact does not have to quarantine if both students are wearing a mask. And that's regardless of the distance between. If a student is COVID positive and either one of the students is not wearing a mask, then the close contact must quarantine, enter the quarantine period.
Did I see your hand?
Yeah, back there with Graham on 812, we had 10 bus contacts. If we're not wearing masks on the bus, then how do we have 10? If everybody's wearing a mask, then we would have to send 10 out.
Microphone.
There were 10 contacts, Mr. Fitch, and we do work with the health department. The health department did quarantine because of the specific situation that happened on the bus with that individual circumstance. They felt like that in an abundance of caution, they need to go ahead and move and quarantine those 10 kids. That was a rare circumstance, and really given the situation that happened at that time is what caused that 10 contacts.
Okay, so last year, anybody, if we was all wearing masks and you still had to quarantine last year with everybody's wearing a mask with a close contact, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Last year, regardless, mask really didn't play a function into the close contacts last year. Last year, if you were a close contact, it was whether you're masked or unmasked, you had to quarantine. This year, the quarantine guidance is different. If both people are masked, then the person who's a close contact does not have to quarantine.
Okay, well then going back to my original question about the bus, it appears that each situation is different. If we're all wearing masks on this bus and we had to have 10 close contacts to go out, then there's not to say that that's not going to occur in the school year, because you're saying that was a special circumstance, correct? If that is the case, no matter if everybody's wearing a mask in school, there still could be an opportunity that somebody could make a decision that situation would still mean that everybody goes home, even though they all have masks. Is that correct?
That would be correct, and I think to an extent, I think each individual circumstance and situation has to be looked at on an individual basis. And I don't think I'm dispelling any confidential information, but the student at Graham threw up on the bus.
Yeah.
So when you have a student that's throwing up, that is very different than a student that is just positive. And so I think that's why the school nurse and health department felt comfortable that decision, because that was a rarity. It was not like just two students sitting beside each other, either on the bus or in class.
Okay, that's all I have.
Dr. Fisher.
Go ahead, Mr. Taylor.
Hey, thanks, Mr. Queen. Dr. Fisher, I apologize, and to the rest of the board members and everyone present, I apologize that I'm not able to be there in person. However, the job takes precedent here. I am listening in. I was not able to see the number of cases versus number of cases and number of contacts. Can you tell me that number, Dr. Fisher?
We have 9 positive cases between the two schools, and we're looking at about 55 close contacts. I don't have that number added up real quickly, but I can look at that.
72.
72.
So that means you had nine kids with COVID. You had 72 close contacts that had to be quarantined. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct. And those
Okay.
those 9 students were positives from inside the school when school was in session. We do have 2 other students that were positive that are on the board members' charts, but those 2 positive were reported prior to the start of school.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Mr. Humphries?
Was debating whether to go here or not. But so this is probably a better question for Tiffany that's not here. But so last year, same mask, same virus. It's a variant, same size virus, same nominal size, same size pores in the mask. Last year, the mask didn't prevent it from spreading. 2 masks, still close contact, still spread according to the health department. This year, somehow, mystically and magically, the mask all of a sudden, if you've got 2 masks on, it stops it, but 1 mask don't. Any shot at explaining the logic of that to me?
I can give you my opinion, but that's outside of my area of expertise, so I don't think I'm qualified to give you my opinion on that.
Check with Tiffany on that, if you would, please.
Well, hang on, let me see if anybody, Ms. Green or... Okay, go ahead.
I've got something about the mask. I've done a little data research myself, whether mask works or don't work. And the COVID particles are 1 micron in size, 0.1. And the best mask you can buy on the market is an N95. And that mask is a 0.3 microns in size, is all it'll take. And then it don't cover your eyes neither. Some people's eyes is very delicate. So if you're going to get it here, it can go through there. It's definitely going to go in your eyes, so you're going to be infected anyway. So what is these masks going to do about the protection? Because this is plant data. It went on. Mr. Fawcett, let me get down here to him. Let's see. Me and my fingers. The code you buy on the market, 90 is. I hit the wrong button. All right. And COVID vaccine. The COVID vaccine is an experimental drug, not approved by the FDA. Responsibility for killing millions of people and sterilizing young ladies, members of the public, my people, I'm asking you to think, if the vaccine and the mask is actually working, why did 4,000 fully vaccinated Massachusetts residents test positive for the COVID-19? Who do the states and countries with the most restricted measures have the worst outbreaks? Look at Australia and look at New Zealand. Look at those. So they've got all of these great restrictions. So I remember how we stood in July when we made our vote. In August, I feel that we need to leave it as people's choice due to this mask, because it actually proves that the mask is not keeping the air clean. And as the football games, the NCHA is not requiring it. Well, those kids is going to be closer than 6 feet. Closer than 6 feet in our sports. We're not requiring a mandate there. And I know, and that is not Dr. Fisher's choice on that. In other words, that's the NCHA rules there. So if we're going to mandate something, then they need to be mandating about our sports too, because those children are going to be coming back into the schools the very next day. And that don't transmit overnight. It takes time. Thank you.
I just want to make one point for some clarification. It says the CDC says that the wearing of face covering slows the spread of COVID-19. It didn't say it prevented it. It says it slows the spread.
Ms. Green and Mr. Shores, you.
I don't have a question. I guess I got a comment. It's sad that we're living in the world we're living in today. I got a call this morning from Ron. Said, "You get any sleep last night?" I started laughing. I'm like, I've always had low blood pressure. Can't give blood. I'm just let me get this off my chest. I go to the doctor I had before I came over here, and they're like, "You got extremely high blood pressure." I'm like, "That's never happened before." So I'm getting ready to make a motion here in a minute that I would ask that those who are going to go and put it on social media and do me, leave these alone. If I get any support for the motion, leave these alone. I can take it. But I don't know why in the world anybody would want to run for an elected office right now. Because we're in a no-win situation. Those who have the same faith as I do, we were told many years ago how to get rid of this virus. But I don't think we're doing what we were told. I hear all the stories about my child's got asthma. My child's nose bleeds after this, wearing a mask. They got claustrophobia. I hear all that. I don't want any child to suffer while they're sitting in a classroom. And I hate to see something that's divided this county, this country, like this. I don't want to get to the point where we have to put police officers out at every side of the school. Everybody has an opinion. But let me state a fact. We have 30 kids in quarantine from Graham Elementary School right now. That's a fact. They're not in school. I don't agree with the CDC the way they're quarantining these people, because if your child has a mask on and the child beside of them has a mask on and your child tests positive, only your child's got to go home. But if a child doesn't have a mask on and the child beside of them has one on and the child that didn't test positive, they both got to go home. If the mask really worked, why does that matter? I don't understand it. Now, the CDC has put us in a bind with the way they're quarantining people. But I go back to the thing, 5 of us got elected right in the middle of COVID. Gosh, did we know what we was getting into. And when I was running in the campaign, I heard so many people say, I want my kid in school. I want my kid in school. Well, this motion I'm going to make, I'm doing it because I want to try to get your kid and keep them in school. Again, if you want to go and put my picture beside communism or whatever, go ahead. Leave these out. Because I am as conservative as they come. I hate masks. And I'm going to be the one that, as soon as, if what I say even get any support, I'm going to be the first one to say I want these masks off as quick as I can. But when I left the meeting yesterday and went into Dr. Fisher's office, and he told me about the possibility of closing an entire school down because of CDC guidance, I'm like, we all know kids do better in school. So, I'm not going to labor on to that.
Well, he still has the floor right now, and then we'll have discussion once a motion's made.
But taking the totality of everything that I know and what I think is in the best interest to keep our kids in school, I want to make a motion that we require masks during instructional time, indoors, during instructional time, that we allow parents to have the option to opt out or exemptions, those being medical or behavioral condition or disability, included but not limited to any person with trouble breathing, asthma, or other health issues, or otherwise unable to put on or remove the face covering without assistance, would be at risk for wearing a mask covering at work or school as determined by local, state, or federal regulations or workplace safety guidelines for religious reasons. And anyone who declines to wear a face mask for these reasons will not be required to produce documentation or any proof of condition. I also would like to be a part of that motion that if the school gives out masks, that the school allow the student to change the mask every 2 hours. Trying to make sure I think through everything. And I think that will be my motion.
Okay, just to repeat, it is a motion to require masks indoors during instructional time. Parents will have exemptions available, medical or behavioral condition. If the mask, and I'm paraphrasing, mask would be a risk, and for religious reasons.
Yes, medical, behavioral conditions or disabilities, health issues, asthma, trouble breathing, and religious issue. And I want to add one more thing to it, and the superintendent to design that exemption form for for the parent to sign.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, point of order for clarification, please.
Okay.
Mr. Shores, you said school allows a student to change every 2 hours, or are you saying
If we're
it
getting,
should change
well,
every 2 hours? I don't know what you.
there's documentation out there that says surgeons should change their mask every 2 hours because of the bacteria. So I think if we're handing a child a mask, if we are school system handing them a mask, that we should offer that child every 2 hours a chance to change masks. I would strongly encourage parents to send more than one mask with your child to school and let them change. And then obviously wash them when they get home. But my motion is if the school hands out the mask, that the school supply or allow the child to switch that mask every 2 hours.
Your motion is an offer to change, not a requirement to change.
No, they don't.
Okay.
But
So allows.
allow the change.
All right.
Allows, it's okay.
And you had for the superintendent
To develop the
provide the
exemption
form.
form, yes, on the conditions that I stated. And again, my reasoning is we've got to keep kids in school, and the CDC is going to remove everybody if we don't try to do something.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Can I amend that motion?
Well, we have to have a second first. Okay, second by Mr. Fitch.
Can I make an amendment to that motion?
We'll see. Go ahead.
I don't know if it's just me, but it seems like the wording of the motion and parents can opt out, which is his words, without any documentation. Seems to me that's the same motion we had, same plan we had, it's just reworded in a different way. So I would have a hard time supporting that, but if we could say, I don't mind the exemptions, but if we could have some kind of verification or supporting documents for that.
Okay.
I'm not saying medical forms, I'm just saying something from the parent to showing supporting documents or some kind of verification for the exemptions. That's all I'm asking.
Okay. Thinking how to phrase that in the amendment. Because would we have to, do we need to tell what documentation is required and what?
Now, I think you can leave that up to the parent, because if they do have exceptions that are valid, the parent has some kind of supporting documentation or something to prove that their point. I guess the way we could amend the amendment, just stating, the first part that we wear the mask indoors. But when he gets to the part where he says you have the right to opt out without any documentation, I would like that part changed. You have the right to opt out, but you must provide some kind of verification or supporting documentations to the exceptions.
I think with the medical or behavioral condition, that may be easy for documentation. The risk from wearing a face covering at work or school, that's like for shop class, if they're welding or doing things like that's going to have to be the superintendent and the principal's call on that. And then I don't know what documentation would be available for a religious reason. I'm not.
Well, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on, we're getting folks going back and forth.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
We have a motion to amend, but we don't have a second. We really need a second before we discuss it.
Please restate your motion.
I second.
All right. Mr. Taylor's quick on the draw there. Give me a second to write down so I keep everything straight. So we have an amendment from Ms. Green to add, to change the motion to require documentation of the exemptions, and a second by Mr. Taylor. Any discussion on the amendment itself?
I just want to say one thing, that part I read came directly from Governor Cooper's executive order they put out last year.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I would make one comment. Sorry, I'll turn my mic. I would like to make one comment. The concern, I'm afraid that we're getting into family privacy if we require documentation and possibly HIPAA laws. I mean, I'm not an expert on that, but it seems like touchy ground to me to start asking parents to give medical information.
Well, if I'm not mistaken,
I can't hear what's being said up here by board members. I'm trying to pay attention and make sure things are done. So please, we were quiet during public participation, so please be quiet while we're conducting business.
to Joel's comment, if I'm not mistaken, there were several executive orders that were put out, but last year, before you were on the board, there was a medical form or a doctor's note needed to be exempt, if I'm not mistaken.
Any other questions on the amendment itself? Mr. Bryant?
Yes, sir. I don't believe that we,
Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay.
I don't believe that we should, basically, if we start requiring medical paperwork and that type of stuff, we're basically telling our parents that we don't trust their judgment with their own kids. I don't think that we should do that. They know their child, and they know what their child's limits are. I don't think we should question that as a board. That's not our position, is to question these parents and what their child needs or what their child doesn't need, and maybe what limitations their child has. It's not for us to do. I don't think we should require anything the parents know.
Mr. Blanton?
Well, he basically
Mr. Queen,
said
can I make a comment?
Hold just a second. Mr. Blanton's got the floor. I'll get you next.
Basically, I'm going back to exactly what I've said before. In July and August, we made a vote, parents' choice. They know their child more than anybody, more than anyone. So I'm sticking to my gun to it should be a parent's choice on their child. Yes, if I need to wear a mask, I'll wear a mask. That's my choice. I took the shot. That was my choice. And that should be anybody else's choice. But I'm going to have to agree with Mr. Fitch that we shouldn't be telling a parent about their child's medical health and putting a form there. So I'm sticking to how I voted in the past, that it should be parents' choice.
Mr. Taylor?
Thank you, Mr. Wayne. To Mr. Fitch's comment about it's not our authority. We shouldn't obtain medical information from parents. We can't require for one instance and not the other. And the one we do require is every single child in Cleveland County schools that decides to play a sport has to have a physical, and they are there. They have to provide documentation from their medical doctor. So I don't see a difference in that. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on the amendment?
Mr. Queen, if I may address Mr. Taylor's comment. I'm not a lawyer, don't even play one on TV, but 11547 prescribes what Mr. Taylor just pointed out. That's literally part of the law that we operate under. 115C47 does not cover what we're talking about now. And I'm not going to go back through all that again. We've discussed it. We've got legal opinions on it. Those have been shared with the board. So I think that's apples and oranges, to be perfectly honest about it, but that's just my opinion. So.
Okay.
Well,
Any other?
that may be apples and oranges, but it's no different than if we have required rules and things at school, and if you want your child exempt, maybe if they got hurt and they have a condition where they need to have special arrangements at school, you have to disclose that, and you ask the school, you provide them documentation and a reason to why your child should be exempt from that rule that the school has, and I do not see this any different than that.
And we have, a lot of requirements for documentation on a lot of things that happen in Cleveland County Schools and in any school system. And I don't see this any different than the requirements and documentation that they have to submit, if they want their child exempt from this proceeding right here that we're talking about as far as COVID.
The only
Do you have
thing,
anything, Mr. Glover?
yeah,
Okay.
Mr. Queen, I could support Ms. Green's idea. I understand what she's saying. I don't think we're asking the parents to go back to the doctor to spend any money to find anything signed by the doctor for that purpose. If your child has some type of issue or medical ailment, they should have that documentation, whether it's a prescription or inhaler or something that they should have. And for them to be exempt, I think they should be able to document that to the appropriate administrators so that they can be exempt from that. If not, then we're going to be in a position that everybody's that doesn't want to wear a mask going to put whatever they want to on the form. So I want to trust everybody. I would hope they would make good judgment, but I don't think that we're asking a lot from the parents to do that. There's a lot of times that they ask different information. If your child's hurt and can't participate in PE, you provide information to say you're opting out of PE for a week or two. There's not any difference in my opinion.
Mr. Queen,
Yes, Mr. Taylor.
just one more comment, please. To Mr. Humphrey's statement, it is apples and oranges when it needs to fit a certain narrative. Everybody has an opinion, and your opinion on whether or not it's legal or not legal varies from mine. And we can have that discussion now or at a later date. But I just think this is a situation that we have to work on. It's our decision to make, and we need to make the right decision. Thank you.
I'm going to ask either Ms. Zink or Dr. Fisher if you have any comment on the documentation portion.
So HIPAA is a provision for healthcare providers that they can't disclose it. So it's not so much that we can't request a documentation. I think we're in the clear to make a request for supporting documentation. Where it gets a little sticky and we run the risk of is in the evaluation of those documents. Do we say just because you sent a supporting document, that's sufficient, and that's our standard? I think we, as the board, don't have the authority to evaluate a note and say, well, this counts, this doesn't count. Whether it's for an inhaler prescription or a sincerely held religious belief. And I think that's where we get complicated. But to request a document to support the exemption form, I think we are totally in the clear to ask for supporting documentation. We're just now met with the question of what do we do with that document? How do we evaluate it? How do we determine what's valid, what's not valid? Unless we just keep it clean and say, submitting it, if it falls in that category of medical or behavioral or at risk or religious, that is in fact sufficient.
Well, the one I'm having trouble with is the religious reason and someone having a sincerely held religious belief. How do you document that? You bring in your baptism certificate? I mean, I'm not trying to be silly, but
No.
I mean, I don't know how you.
I mean, you could just request a brief statement as to what that belief is. I don't think constitutionally we can actually force someone to do that. We could just maybe have more attestation check mark that it is because of a religious belief. Maybe they could just give a brief acknowledgement of what that faith is, or if they want to give a sentence or two about what that sincerely held belief is. But I don't believe we have the authority to go through and discern and say, well, this person really does have a sincerely held belief. This person is just checking a box. That would get us in trouble. But I think a check mark and a line on a paper that you could write down your supporting statement, that would be sufficient.
Ms. Sink sorry, Mr. Quinn, can I
Go ahead.
Ms. Sink, if supporting documents are sent in, and if the board, which we're not medical professionals, we're not, they're not for us to review, but we do have, correct me if I'm wrong, we do have nurses on staff at every school, and if not, can be on site at every school. Are they not medically professionally okay to check these supporting documents?
I mean, we could certainly, as a board, task them with that review. I was just speaking that the board should not put ourselves in that position to be making those determinations. To essentially punt it to a school nurse, that would be more appropriate on the medical behavioral topics or exemptions.
Correct. The medical behavior, I completely agree that they should have some insight into that.
It would seem to me that the amendment should be amended to limit that documentation just for the medical or behavioral. That item is more clear to verify than the other.
Well, you're parliamentarian, John, so correct me if I'm wrong. I think we need to vote on the amendment, and then if it fails, we can have...
You can amend an amendment. You can go too deep.
Okay.
Or is a Mr. Parliamentarian,
It's like this doesn't happen too often, but...
A friendly amendment if Ms. Green just wanted to change her amendment, or do we need to go through the whole?
Honestly, the way we've handled this so far is one at a time. And
Okay.
that seems to have, it's clear for the public, it's clear for us to understand. We can get into these bizarre parliamentary procedures and get things so complicated we can't keep up with them. And I think that was the way we thought early on with this board.
Let me ask it this way. Ms. Green, did your documentation apply to all three exemptions or just the first one?
Really, the first and second, the religious is kind of, like she said, you could just check religious, and if you want to write a statement, that's fine. But it's really the first one, the medical and behavior condition, because most of the time, if you do have a medical or behavior condition, the school, it's already on file a lot of times, because the kids either have a IEP plan or they have special circumstances where they don't have to follow all the rules. And then I'm kind of confused on that second one that we want, would be at risk from wearing a face mask covering in work or school. Is that just pertaining to the classes? Because I could say I'm at risk because my glasses fall up and I may fall on my head and break my leg. I'm just define that for me.
It's really intended to give the superintendent and the principals some latitude depending on what that student is involved in, whether it be a carpentry class, welding class, whatever else.
Couldn't we make that one, instead of being that vague and that big of loophole with that second one, couldn't you make it something like in special classes that a mask would be at risk for the students, the teacher, or something,
That would be a second. We would need to do another amendment.
Why don't
to
we
change
just
that.
have Ms. Green rephrase her amendment that's already been seconded by Mr. Taylor?
Before she does that,
Hang on, because what I'm asking you, Ms. Green, wink, wink, is do I hear you clarifying your motion that it only applies to the medical documentation?
The medical and the at-risk.
Well, we might fix that at-risk part.
Okay.
I'm not trying to I'm trying to make this simple, but
Yes,
if you see what I'm trying to do here without.
Yes, so my amendment to include the medical behavior and the at-risk, not the religion. Is that better for you?
I wish you'd leave that second part out. We're kind of
think that
dancing around
second-
Robert's rules, but I'm trying to get through this.
I just think that second, okay. All right, let's compromise. Okay, so I'm good with the medical behavior disability. Okay.
Okay, so your amendment as you've just clarified, is to require documentation for the medical or behavioral condition.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Mr. Taylor, is that fine with you since you seconded the motion, is with your understanding of her clarification?
Yes.
Okay. Any,
I have a question, Ms. Sink.
let me, about the amendment.
Well, in a sense it is, yes.
Well, all we're discussing is the amendment right now. So, I mean,
Well,
we can
we have not discussed the staff or faculty any about these masks.
Yeah, it's.
Well, I know it's a different issue, and then on welding, that's very dangerous for a child to have to wear a face mask under that helmet and a spark comes up, because sparks does fly.
So the larger motion addressed staff, I believe, and so
Well,
right
it
now
just
we're just
required
talking about
mask indoors, which is everybody.
everybody.
And that would include them, see, and they weld on the inside, and with that paper mask, and their spark goes in there, it's gonna work on their face.
All right, we have.
Mr. Chair, if
go ahead with your
specifically question to Ms. Sink on the amendment. Medical documentation. We had a parent at the last meeting that spoke about his child coming home with headaches every day. He observes this medical issue. He sees it in his child. Maybe don't go to the doctor. He just knows what's going on. He's a parent. Parents, all of us parents have a pretty good idea of what's going on with our children. Are we saying that he would have to go to the doctor to get documentation for that, or can he just document that himself?
Well, and that's why I was saying, that's where we get sticky if we're putting the board in a position of evaluating what document's valid or not. But if we do essentially direct our nurses to review that supporting document, I think they would be in a better position to determine, is this sufficient or not?
Question on that, are we asking nurses to go outside their field of expertise and exceed their license?
They should be under a doctor's supervision before doing anything outside of that. But now that's a good point and probably something that needs additional research. But within their scope of a school nurse, if they want to receive a form, seek clarification if needed. But I don't want our board in a position of trying to determine if a note from a parent or a medical professional is sufficient. I think if we direct that to the school nurse, they're in a better position. If they don't have the license to make that determination, they would likely know where to go next to determine that. I know we've got some doctors in the room that can probably...
All right, the amendment on the floor is to require documentation of any medical or behavioral conditions for the exemption. We've kind of been back and forth. I hate to ask, but last chance for any questions or comment.
Yeah, I'd like the clarification on what we're gonna do on his situation. I mean, are we gonna, if that kid comes home from school every day for 3 days, complaining about a headache, and crying like the guy come up and spoke, are we going to require him to go to the doctor? And if not, if that child is okay when he first comes to school, who are we to say that that's not happening? So who's going to, how is it somebody can take that and look at it and say this is not happening, so you have to wear a mask? You're setting yourself up for a lawsuit because you're going to start discriminating at that point. Because we don't have that authority to say you're right, you're wrong. Your kid's not having a headache, but yours is. Where are we going to make that? Who's going to make that determination?
But Rodney, excuse me, Mr. Fitch, as a parent, if your kid is coming home with headaches every day, would you not want to take him to a physician or pediatric to see why he's having a headache? It may not be the mask that's giving him the headaches. It may be that his eyes are bad and he's straining them to see the board.
Well, if we didn't start having headaches till we started wearing masks, that would be a pretty good assumption. I'd like to take the mask off first.
We're getting to too much back and forth again. I think we just
vote on the amendment.
I'm not going to call for the question as and I hope nobody else does, because then we have to vote on the call. So if there's no further questions, we'll vote on the amendment. All right, hearing none. Those in favor of Amendment 1 to require documentation of any medical or behavioral conditions for an exemption, if you would raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? The amendment fails 4-5. All right. There was some discussion of clarification of the second exemption. What's the pleasure of the board?
What second is it?
That was the statement about an exemption is there for risk from wearing a face covering at work or school determined by local, state, or federal regulations. And we took,
Go back to the original motion that I made?
that was the exemptions you read.
Right.
But somebody would have to ask for it.
Well, that's why I'm asking, that came up, so I'm trying to give everybody a chance to change whatever they need to change.
I mean, we would like some clarification on that if you have any.
I'm going to pick Dr. Fisher. Do you have any, how do you see that as a superintendent, that second exemption about the risk of wearing a face covering?
Not to oversimplify it, but I would see it as if your job or your function of coming to school created an issue where it puts you at risk for wearing a face mask, then that would be an exemption that may apply. I think it is what it is.
It's hard to put a circle around that.
I think it.
I mean, the welding's the first thing that comes to mind.
It could be, yes, it could be a student that's doing that. It could be a variety of different issues. But it's really, if what you're doing would be at risk for wearing a face covering at work or school as determined by local, state, or federal guidelines, I think the example that was given in terms of welding would be just a good example of what that is. When you're welding, you're wearing a welding helmet. Probably don't need a welding helmet and a face mask with that. So I think that's really, not to oversimplify it, but that's kind of why I think it's in there, to catch some provisions that would be because of whether it's the guidelines of a particular course, or the guidelines of a job description, or guidelines that you're doing, you may not be wearing a mask. If you needed to be able to read lips, then that may be a reason not to do that. And that would be in that student's purview.
Any other questions?
Mr. Queen?
Yes, sir.
This goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. If there's an exemption for a student that's in, or students that are in welding class, that exemption only applies to that certain class. Once they leave that class, their mask goes back on in all other classes. Correct?
That would be my understanding. I think that's fair.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to require mask indoors during instructional time. That's from 8 to 3. That includes everyone in the buildings. Parents have exemptions for medical or behavioral conditions, a risk from wearing a face covering, or for religious reasons. We will provide, the superintendent will provide a form for that. You'll sign that, attesting that those things are so. We will supply masks and give students an opportunity to change those every 2 hours. And I already said the part about the superintendent providing the form. So we got a motion and a second. Any further questions on the motion as presented?
Mr. Queen, I'd just like to ask, when will that go in effect? Dr. Fisher, what is your recommendation? Does this go in effect immediately after the vote? Start at 7:30 in the morning, or do you recommend it starting the first day of school?
I
Can someone repeat that? I couldn't hear Dr. Fisher.
He recommended that the motion go into effect Monday, August 23rd, first day of school.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or clarification? Mr. Bland?
We never did bring up our staff and faculty.
Yeah, that's included. It's everybody that's in our school buildings.
Everybody.
Yes.
Okay?
That would be maintenance, custodians, food nutrition. Delivery. Yeah, if there's a contractor there working, anybody that enters the school building during instructional time.
Well, how am I going to vote when y'all coming up with that and some might come up with something else when I still say people's choice?
I don't know. That's a decision you have to make.
I made it just then.
Well, any other questions or comments on the motion?
Clarify one more thing for me. You just said to provide students a mask to change every 2 hours, or just to allow students?
To allow.
Okay.
Okay, then is the school system going to furnish the mask?
We will
Every
have
2
masks.
hours?
We will have masks available if someone wants to change or they need one. I think, as I understand, we've got about 300,000 masks on hand.
Well, is it the N95?
No.
Well, I feel like that if we're going to require this mandate, then because I guess I'm going to get defeated. So, and I've been defeated before. So, then we ought to put the best we can on them to protect them.
Well, and
I'll make that a motion if you'd like for me to make that a motion.
I'll just, I know. I will point out if this motion fails and there's no other motion, then we revert back to what was decided August 9th, which masks are optional. So I'm not saying that another motion may not enter the floor, but the motion on the floor is to require masks. It provides some exemptions for those that need it, and has the other information there. So that, just to point out to the board, should this fail, then we go back to our August 9th, where masks are optional, barring another motion on the floor. Any further discussion on the motion on the floor?
I call for the question.
All right. Those in favor of the motion as presented? Okay. All right. Those in favor of ending debate, calling for the question, if you'd raise your hand. Mr. Taylor?
Yes, I'm in favor of ending the debate. Let's go to the vote.
Okay. We get one unanimous vote today, at least. So, all right. We've got the question before us is the motion. Those in favor of the motion as presented, if you would raise your hand. Mr. Taylor?
I am in favor of the motion.
All right. Motion passes 7-2. Do I have a motion to adjourn? All in favor can leave. Thank you. And thanks to everybody for being respectful and having a good meeting. Thank you.